Imagine a kid you don't even know walking up your driveway, pointing at your Harley like it's a catalog photo, and saying, "I'll take that one." What would you do if his mom waved from the curb and claimed the HOA already approved it, like your motorcycle was community property? I was on the porch that morning with a mug of coffee, steam curling in the cool air, thinking about nothing heavier than trimming the hedges. The sun was soft, the neighborhood quiet. That kind of gentle quiet you only get before leaf blowers and delivery trucks wake up. Then this lanky teenager strolls up, stops at the Chrome, and repeats it slower, like he's ordering a sandwich. "I'll take that one." I chuckled. "Good one, kid." He didn't crack a smile. "I'm serious. Mom said you'd give it to me. She cleared it with the HOA." I set my mug down so I wouldn't drop it. "Come again." He jerked his chin toward the cul-de-sac. That's when I saw her, Karen, the self-crowned queen of our HOA, standing on the curb with oversized sunglasses. That arms-folded pose like she's about to auction off my garage. She gave this little pageant wave. All sugar and vinegar. You gotta be confused. I told the kid, keeping it friendly. He huffed. Like I was failing a test, he wrote. "She said you don't ride it anymore. And the noise bothers the neighborhood." Let me make something clear. I do ride it. Every weekend. Rain permitting. I've had that Harley for over a dozen years. I customized her, piece by piece pipes, tuned to a warm thrum. Deep sea blue paint that catches the afternoon like glass. A seat I stitched by hand on a late Sunday. That bike isn't a toy. She's a chapter of my life. I walked off the porch, onto my own lawn. Funny how I felt the need to emphasize that, and headed for Karen. "What is this?" She barely blinked. "That motorcycle is an eyesore. And the engine rattles windows." The board agreed. "You should donate it to someone who'd appreciate it." "And by someone," I said, glancing at the kid. "You mean your son?" "Exactly." She smiled, like we were sharing a joke. "He's turning 17 soon. It'd be perfect." I laughed louder than I meant to. "You've lost your mind." Her mouth flattened. "If you won't be neighborly, I'll escalate." I didn't know what that meant yet. I learned fast. That Saturday, I took the bike out for a short ride. The Harley. Not Karen. Just to be crystal. Sun on my back. Wind like a cool hand on a fever. The engine hummed that deep, happy note only riders understand. I parked under the oak where I always do, right of the garage. I wasn't even done unclipping my helmet when the siren started. 2 cruisers barreled into my driveway like I'd knocked over a bank. Doors flew open. 2 officers, one tall, with that steady cop stare. The other compact with a jaw like a brick, stepped out, hands resting near their belts. "Sir, step away from the motorcycle." I blinked. "Excuse me, step away from the vehicle now." I held my hands out and took a couple steps back. "Is there a problem?" "Officer," the shorter one flipped a notepad. "We received a report of stolen property on site. A resident claims you unlawfully took possession of a motorcycle intended for her minor son. You could have knocked me over with a feather." "Hold up, that's my bike. I've got the title inside. Registered in my name for years." Karen, like she'd been crouched behind her blinds waiting for applause, swept across the street. Her son trailed behind, arms crossed like the pose had grown roots. "There," she called, pointing at my Harley like a prosecutor. "That's the one. He promised to give it to my son, then reneged. That's theft." I actually laughed. I thought this was weird HOA theater. The officers did not laugh. "Sir," the tall one said, "do you have proof of ownership?" "Yeah. Inside." Please stay where you are. The short one stepped between me and my front door. Tell us where to find it. I told them which drawer held the title, registration, and a folder of maintenance receipts because I'm that guy. As they headed for the door, Karen leaned close enough to perfume the air. You could have done the right thing, she whispered, a smile creeping on. Now the whole neighborhood will know what kind of man you are. I breathed in, counted to 5, out. Kept my cool. 'Cause, you know, the alternative never helps. The officers came back a few minutes later with the papers. The tall one held up the title. It's his. Clean. His name, for many years. Karen's smirk melted. Her son scowled. This isn't fair. He said I could have it. I said no such thing. I snapped, then caught myself. Sorry, but I didn't. Karen pivoted like a ballroom dancer. Well, maybe he didn't steal it, but he misled us. That's fraud. Even the short officer gave her a look that said, "Ma'am, please." They left. No charges. No warnings, just 2 annoyed officers and 1 Harley under my oak. Right where she belonged. I'd love to tell you that ended it. With Karen. Nothing ends till she says it does. 3 days later, there was a letter taped to my front door, HOA, notice of violation. Community disruption. Failure to comply with neighborhood courtesy standards. Karen had filed a formal complaint, claiming my motorcycle was a nuisance, that I'd made false verbal agreements to hand it over, and that my hostile attitude created a toxic environment. She was trying to use the HOA like a pry bar on private property. I wanted to laugh, but my stomach did a slow roll. This wasn't gossip anymore. It was a coordinated squeeze. So I called Mark, an old friend from a veterans group. These days he worked over at the state attorney's office. Mark doesn't rattle. I told him everything, from the kid pointing at my bike, to the bogus police call, to the HOA letter stuck on my door like a scarlet sticker. He listened, then said, "Sounds like she's leveraging HOA authority to coerce a private transfer. In my opinion, that's more than neighbor drama. What do I do? Document everything. Full statement. Photos of the bike. Ownership timestamps. Copy of the HOA letter. Any footage. Doorbell cam. Phone. Whatever. Save every message. Don't engage directly." I spent the next day building a war chest. I pulled service receipts. Printed the title, registration, insurance card, and then gold. My doorbell cam had captured the kid walking onto my property, pointing and saying, "Mom said you'd give it to me." I grabbed stills, clipped audio, date stamped the lot. All of it went into a thick folder. When I dropped it off at the state attorney's office, the receptionist eyed the folder like it might crawl. "For review," I said. It thudded on the counter. A real satisfying sound. Later that week, Mark called. She filed a complaint here, too. She what? Says you swindled her son with false promises. We've reviewed both sides. Might go to mediation. But listen, you're not the one under the microscope anymore. I felt something I hadn't in days. The floor under my feet. No promises. Sure. But facts are facts. Then came the HOA meeting. Normally, I avoid those like I avoid kale chips. But this time I wore a clean shirt. Decent jacket. Folder under my arm. Karen was already there, holding court with 2 board members like it was her living room. Her son sat slumped, arms crossed, eyes flicking around like the room owed him something. She spotted me and rolled her eyes. Oh, you decided to show. Wouldn't miss it, I said, and took a seat. Neighbors trickled in, whispering. You could feel it. Our sleepy neighborhood had rolled over in bed and realized the alarm was blaring. Bill, the HOA president, soft-spoken. Looks like somebody's favorite math teacher, called the meeting to order. New business. Karen's hand shot up. I'd like to request action against Mr. Owens for failing to fulfill a verbal commitment, intentional community disturbance, and inappropriate conduct with my family. Bill adjusted his glasses. This is regarding the motorcycle, yes, she said. Rich with drama. He misled my son. Promised the bike. Then reneged. When I tried to mediate, he became aggressive. I have concerns about his mental state and a pattern of. She kept going. There's people who can turn a spilled coffee into a felony. Karen's that person. 5 minutes of painting herself and her son as delicate victims of my dangerous lifestyle choices. A few neighbors shifted. Even her allies looked like they wanted seatbelts. When she finally wound down, Bill turned to me. Mr. Owens, would you like to respond? I stood, set my folder on the table, opened it so the pages wouldn't scatter. First, I never promised that child anything. I slid out stills from my doorbell cam. What I do have is footage of him stepping onto my property, pointing at my bike, and saying, Mom said you'd give it to me. A ripple moved through the room. I handed copies to the board. Second, here's the police incident record. No theft. No crime. No anything. Third, here's a letter acknowledging a complaint was filed at the state attorney's office and reviewed. And this, I added, passing around the HOA notice Karen taped up, is your own violation letter next to the bylaw section on misuse of complaint procedures. I highlighted it 'cause I'm that kind of organized. Silence fell. Heavy and honest. Karen's face flushed, then paled. She opened her mouth, but Bill lifted a hand. Thank you, he said gently. We need a brief recess. They left to huddle in a side room. The neighbors buzzed. A couple folks I only knew by wave gave me small nods, those quiet, we see you nods that mean everything. The board returned after a bit. Bill cleared his throat. We're not issuing any sanctions today. We will review the complaint process. Further personal disputes should avoid using HOA channels unless there's a clear covenant violation. He paused. And please, everyone, let's keep things civil. Not a win. Not yet, but the ground had shifted. 2 days later, a letter arrived from a law firm. Inside, a cease and desist. It claimed I had emotionally misled a minor and caused distress to both Karen and her son. It demanded I surrender the motorcycle as restitution or prepare to face civil action. I laughed until I saw the signature. It was real. She'd hired an attorney. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about the bike anymore. It was about control. It ate her up that someone like me, quiet, independent, not impressed by her little power, games didn't fold. I called Mark and read the letter. He chuckled. My personal view, she's bluffing. If she tries to launch civil action off an issue the board already questioned, she might be stepping into liability herself, he added. But we'll keep it by the book. Together, we drafted a response formal, plain, heavy with evidence. We included a counter-notice warning that continued harassment could trigger my own claim. I sent it through a steady attorney from my vets group. No fireworks. Just fact. The moment that letter landed, the noise stopped. No knocks. No sticky notes. No smug waves. like a balloon exhaling its last breath, and sag. Then, something I didn't expect, the neighborhood started talking. Folks I'd waved to for years. People whose names I mangled in my head. Began sharing stories. Turns out, I wasn't the first target. Paint colors. Lawn length. Excessive noise. One family with a service dog? Yeah, she'd hounded them too. Everyone felt too tired to fight, or too worried about rocking the boat. But now there was a spark. We had a block barbecue that weekend, the kind with folding chairs, coolers, and paper plates that never hold enough baked beans. Conversation drifted from weather to football to, finally, the thing. A teacher named Renee told me how Karen tried to fine her for a wreath that clashed with community aesthetics. The Martins got a threat over their mailbox shade too cheerful. Allegedly. Eddie, a widower with a soft voice, admitted Karen had warned him his porch light was aggressively bright. Aggressively. A light bulb. Why does she keep winning? Renee asked, letting out a breath. Why do we keep letting her? Because she shows up, I said. She files the paperwork, speaks the loudest, scares people with rules, and, you know, most of us got jobs and kids and knees that hurt. She's got time. Renee cocked her head. Then we show up, fair and square. I ain't proud of it, but I felt a real smile. By the next HOA meeting, the air felt charged. People came early. They brought notes. They brought calm. That last part matters. 'Cause yelling is the fast lane to nowhere. The board sat up front, Bill. Steady. Grace. The treasurer. Numbers neat as a hymn, and two newer members who looked like they'd stumbled onto a reality show. Karen arrived late. Sunglasses on, though the room was church basement dim. Her son wasn't with her. For a second I wondered where he was. Then, remembered, it wasn't my job to wonder. Bill opened with routine items. Then, Renee raised a hand. Before new business, we'd like to add a community discussion on complaint procedures and board conduct. Murmurs. Then nods. Bill checked the bylaws. Then nodded. Noted. Renee stood with a folder organized. Color tabs, like a school project, but she kept her tone warm. We're grateful for volunteers who serve. We also believe our HOA exists to maintain common areas and build community, not to police taste or weaponize fines. She laid out incidents, no names. No shaming, just patterns. Letters for wreath colors. Threats over porch lights. Demands about mailbox shades. And, yes, the motorcycle saga presented as a case of process misuse rather than personal grievance. She finished. We're not here to fight. We're here to reset. Grace folded her hands. Thank you. That's fair. Karen stood without being recognized. This is an ambush. These complaints are fabrications designed to smear me. She pointed at me, has been rallying people with misinformation. I took a breath and stood. I posted exactly one statement on the neighborhood page, with facts and documents. I haven't discussed you personally and won't start now. Liar. She snapped. Bill rapped the table. Please. Respectful language. Karen's voice dropped to a hiss. The noise from that bike is unbearable. You ride at all hours. You promised my son, not true. I said. Quiet. Never promised. Renee lifted a hand. Let's stop relitigating. We're asking for better rules and better behavior. That's it. Grace looked at Bill. Then at us. Okay. Here's what we can do. We can create a code of conduct for board members and homeowners. We can revise complaint intake to require documented covenant violations. not preferences. And we can set a decibel standard tied to the city ordinance so nobody guesses what's too loud. She added, "This will take time. Volunteers are welcome." A small wave of relief moved through the room. People like rules when they're clear and fair. People hate rules when they feel like a net for only some fish. Karen crossed her arms. "This is capitulation. It's accountability." Grace said softly. The board voted to form a committee. Renee volunteered. And before I knew it, so did I. I'm not a committee guy. But sometimes you gotta do the unfun thing to keep the place livable. Our first meeting was in the clubhouse. Windows open to the smell of cut grass. We brought coffee and sat in a circle. No podiums. No power plays. Renee facilitated like she'd been born to it. We broke into 3 buckets: complaints, process, board conduct, noise standards. I joined the noise group with Eddie and a guy named Clark who repairs HVAC units and knows decibels like some folks know baseball stats. We pulled the city code. We mapped out quiet hours. We proposed a simple test measure at the property line with any reasonable meter, average over a short window, and compared to the standard. If a noise passes the code, it passes the HOA, full stop. And because we're neighbors, we added a courtesy clause if something is borderline. A friendly conversation comes before a letter. Meanwhile, the complaints group drafted a form that required citing a specific covenant clause and including photos or recordings. No anonymous drive-by notes. The conduct group wrote a pledge board members would not use their position for personal gain, would declare conflicts, would refrain from personal harassment, and would never threaten fines outside proper process. Simple things. But, the simple things are the whole ball game. We presented it at the next meeting. Bill smiled. Grace looked relieved. The room voted to adopt all 3 proposals on a provisional basis, pending a full community vote. Karen voted no to each item, staring straight ahead like someone had swapped her steering wheel for a brick. Afterward, in the parking lot, she approached me. "You're not a good neighbor," she said. "Like a weather report. I mow my lawn, fix my fence, wave at folks, and mind my business." I replied, "Feels neighborly. You humiliated my family." I presented facts. "I didn't talk about your family." She took a step closer. "You can still make this right." "I already did," I said, "by showing up and helping fix the process." She walked away without another word. Something told me it wasn't over. A week later, a tow truck eased into our street at dawn. Yellow beacons blinking like sleepy eyes. I was halfway through a cup of coffee when I heard the hydraulic whine. The truck angled toward my driveway. I slipped on boots, grabbed my phone, and stepped outside. "Morning," I called. Friendly enough. "Can I help you?" The driver looked sheepish. "I got a work order to remove a vehicle violating community storage rules." He glanced at the Harley. "Says motorcycle is inoperable and abandoned." "Inoperable," I repeated, then thumbed the starter. The Harley woke with a low, velvet growl that probably made the truck's air freshener tremble. "Not abandoned either." He winced. I figured. The order came from the HOA office. From the board or from a person. He looked at the paper. Just a name. Karen. "Okay," I said, keeping my tone even. "There's no board vote authorizing tow action on private property. And even if there was, You'd need a legal process. Removing this would be trespassing. He shifted. Decent guy, stuck in a silly spot. I don't want trouble. I'll call my dispatcher. Thanks, I said, and hit record on my phone. Mind if I film while you call, just to document? He shrugged. Go ahead. After a quiet back and forth on his headset, he nodded to me, canceling the order. Sorry for the hassle. Not your fault, I said. Grab a donut on your way out. On me. I handed him a 10-spot, sorry, $10. And he laughed. Tension gone. By lunch, the story had moved through the neighborhood like wind in leaves. Not because I posted it, but because, well, trucks with beacons attract eyes. Renee texted, "Are you okay?" I said I was. She responded, "We need an emergency board meeting." That evening, the community room filled up fast. Bill looked tired in the way only volunteers look. Grace's jaw was set. Karen was already seated, hands folded, smile that did not reach her eyes. Bill began. A towing order was issued this morning in the name of the HOA without an authorizing board vote. This is a serious breach. Karen lifted a shoulder. It was a clerical request. The motorcycle is a nuisance. Grace's voice was even. It was an unlawful request. The HOA cannot tow from private property without both a board action and proper legal process. You know this. I was acting for the safety of the community. Karen said, "There's oil stains, noise, visual clutter." Clark, from our noise group, raised a hand. First, oil stains can be addressed with a kitty litter and a hose. Second, our noise standard just passed the provisional vote. Third, visual clutter is not a covenant. Karen's smile slipped. You people don't appreciate what it takes to maintain standards. Renee spoke softly. Standards aren't the issue. Abuse is. The room was quiet long enough to hear the clock's second hand. Bill finally said, "We're moving to a formal censure. We'll draft a letter restricting unilateral actions by any board member. And we'll set a date for a recall election per bylaws." He looked at Karen. "You're welcome to run again on the same ballot." She pushed back from the table. "You can't do this to me. We're doing it for the community." Bill said, "And for you, too. This isn't healthy." I went home and sat on the porch. The kind of tired that feels like you've carried groceries for a mile. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then answered. A man's voice. "I'm Karen's attorney. We can settle this quietly. Donate the motorcycle to a youth charity in her son's honor. And all complaints end." I exhaled slow. "No. Thank you for the call. Do not contact me again without sending formal correspondence to my attorney." I hung up, texted Mark, and forwarded the number. Mark replied, "Documented." 2 mornings later, I found a note under my doormat. It said, "Some neighbors think your bike is dangerous." No signature. The letters were clipped from a magazine, like a bad thriller. I took photos, bagged it, and dropped it at the police substation. A simple report. No drama. Just data. By now, the thing had ballooned beyond me. People were nervous. People were angry. But also people were awake. The committee kept working. We scheduled a sound test for my bike with Clark's meter, plus a second meter owned by a neighbor who works in stage lighting. We did it by the book, measured at the property line, at idle and under light rev. During normal hours, we compared results to the city ordinance. Passed. Both times. Clark wrote a tidy paragraph. and we sent it to the board. Not a victory lap, just an answer. Meanwhile, the recall petition moved. Renee spearheaded it. But half the cul-de-sac carried clipboards. It wasn't a witch hunt. It was a boundary. People signed because they wanted to breathe again. Karen posted on the neighborhood page that the recall was harassment by a small group of malcontents. She accused me by name of inciting a mob. I took a breath, counted, and refused to comment. Renee posted a single response. Please attend the meeting and vote. Simple. Clean. The day of the recall. The clubhouse parking lot looked like a holiday. Folding tables with ballots. Volunteers checking names. A cooler of water and a plate of cookies someone's grandma made with streaks of pink icing. Bill opened with a short statement about procedure. He choked up once, which, got me a little too, then handed it to the parliamentarian who walked us through each step. No gotchas. No ambushes. Just civic work at a folding table. When the floor opened for comments, Karen stepped forward. Her voice shook. I have given years to this community. I have kept standards when others were lazy. I have protected our property values. Renee nodded respectfully. Thank you for your time. Karen continued. You all think he's a hero because he has a loud toy. Heads turned toward me. I looked at the floor. Not out of shame, but because grandstanding ain't my thing. But he lies. He lied to my son. He humiliated us. He turned you against me. I looked up then and spoke. Steady. I didn't turn anyone. Folks turned themselves when they saw the process misused. This isn't about bikes. It's about how we treat each other. A quiet yes rustled through the room. Votes were cast. Ballots counted in the open. Bill announced the result. I won't dress it up. Karen was recalled by a wide margin. She gathered her purse with robotic care and walked out without a word. The door closed softly, like a period. After. We didn't cheer. Felt wrong to cheer. We exhaled. People drifted into little knots, talking about mowing schedules and a rainstorm coming, and who could help Eddie fix a loose shutter. Ordinary, decent things. That night, I rolled the Harley under the oak and sat with a beer, not a victory beer. More like a thank you beer. I thought about the kid and hoped he had better voices in his life than the one with sunglasses. I hoped Karen might find a place where control wasn't her only language. Truth is, control's just fear in a nicer coat. The board elected Renee to fill the seat until the next regular election. Gray stayed on. Bill took a break. Said he needed to remember how to fish. We drew up final versions of the complaint form, code of conduct, and noise standard, and sent them to the community for a full vote. They passed with comfortable margins. Now what Eddie asked me on a slow walk back from the mailbox. Now, I said, we do the boring work. We show up. We keep receipts. We talk first. Write later. He patted my shoulder. That'll preach. Months slid by. Not quiet exactly, but honest. The kind of quiet where kids laugh in sprinklers and nobody counts the decibels of joy. The kind of quiet where a leaf blower buzzes and, if it's too early, you knock and say, hey, mind pushing that back an hour? And the neighbor says, my bad. We had disagreements, of course, we did. Humans aren't potted plants. But we had a way to handle them now. And the way real talk is the whole thing. Karen kept to herself. I'd catch a glimpse of her on evening walks. Eyes forward. Shoulders tense. We passed like ships. Both of us stubborn enough not to look away first. I never felt triumph. The whole thing felt like patching a roof after a storm necessary. Not glorious. One Saturday, I was adjusting the chain tension on the Harley when I heard footsteps. I looked up to see Karen's son hovering at the edge of my driveway. He had the same crossed-arm stance, but his face was different, less sure. More human. "Hey," I said, wiping my hands. "You all right?" He glanced at the bike, then at me. I wanted to say sorry for that day." I nodded. "I appreciate that." He looked at the asphalt. "Mom said a lot of stuff. I thought it was true. Parents are loud in our heads," I said. "Gentle. Takes time to figure out what's ours." He cracked a small smile. "Cool bike. Thanks." I paused. "If you want to learn to change oil or fix a chain, I can show you. No rides. Just wrenching. You'll learn more with a ratchet than on a seat anyway." He brightened. "For real, for real." He came by the next Saturday with a shy wave. We laid out tools, gloves, rags. I taught him torque patterns and why small turns beat big swings. He listened. He asked good questions. He said he wanted to study engineering. There was grease under his nails and something like relief in his shoulders when he left. You might think I told Karen. I didn't. Wasn't about her. Wasn't about me either. It was about a kid who'd been handed a busted map and decided to learn the terrain himself. Meanwhile, the HOA took on projects that felt like wins. You can point at fresh paint at the playground, a couple benches along the walking path, a little free library outside the clubhouse that filled up with paperbacks overnight. Grace set the budget like a metronome. Renee ran meetings like a porch conversation firm. Warm, efficient, folks who'd sworn off HOA anything started coming back. Not to fight, but to help. One guy organized a tool share list. Another offered to pressure wash porches for seniors. No charge. Ownership felt less like a deed and more like a verb. One evening near dusk, I heard a soft knock. When I opened the door, Karen stood there. No sunglasses. No armor. For a second, I wondered if she'd come to light the fuse again. Then, I saw the white envelope in her hand. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Careful." I nodded and stepped onto the porch. The sky glowed that cotton candy pink you get after a hot day. We sat. She perched on the edge, like the chair might eject her. "I'm moving," she said. "New job. Different town." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Okay." She stared at the porch rail. I wanted to say. She stopped. Shook her head. I wanted to say I thought I was protecting the neighborhood. I grew up where everything fell apart because nobody cared. Then I got here and thought if I could keep things tight, they wouldn't fall apart. I pushed too hard. She looked at me. Eyes fierce. Not wet. "I still think you were wrong about some things." I probably was, I said. "I often am." She cracked a ghost of a smile. "But I was wrong about more." We sat with the cicadas for a minute. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a copy of a letter she'd sent the board a resignation. Clean and short. She'd even written a line recommending the code of conduct remain in force to protect residents and volunteers alike. That last phrase felt like a different woman talking. "Thank you," I said. "I didn't do it for you," she replied. Then softened. "Okay. Maybe a little." We stood. She offered her hand. I shook it. Not friends. Not enemies. Neighbors doing a brave, small thing, ending a chapter without tearing out the page. After she left, I sat a long time. The Harley reflected the porch light like a pond. The street was quiet. A kid, 2 houses down, practiced guitar, picking a melody over and over till it finally found its shape. That's how it is with communities. I think clumsy notes until somebody holds the rhythm. Then everyone else can find their part. If you're listening because you've got your own HOA saga, if somebody's telling you what to park, where to stand, who to be, here's what I learned. The hard way. Start with receipts, not rage. Save letters. Take photos. Keep logs. Document. 'Cause memory is emotional and paper isn't. Show up. A rule shouted in a hallway loses to a rule written at a table. Go to meetings. Vote. Bring a buddy so it's less miserable. Speak plain. People respect calm facts more than clever burns. Yeah. Jokes feel good. Wins feel better. Offer solutions. Complaints are easy. Proposals are hard. Be the person with a plan. Simple. Fair. Specific. Protect your peace. When it gets ugly, step back. Don't feed the fire with late-night posts you'll regret in the morning. See the humans. Even the ones making you nuts. Fear wears lots of costumes. Control is one of them. And listen. When the storm passes, keep the process you built. Institutions don't stay fixed, they drift. Keep a hand on the wheel. Months after Karen left, the kid came by with a clean pair of gloves he bought himself. I got into the engineering program, he said, grinning like a sunrise. That's good work, I said, proud like an uncle. You did that, he shrugged. You helped. We changed oil that day, even though it didn't need changing. Sometimes you do the thing, not because the machine needs it, but because the person does. He asked about torque again, and I told him a secret: life's mostly small turns at steady pressure. Big swings, strip threads. When he left, I rolled the Harley to the curb, popped my helmet on, and took the long way to the grocery store. The engine purred. Not a roar. Not a whisper. Just that happy middle that lets you hear the world and yourself at the same time. A couple neighbors waved. One gave a thumbs up. A dog barked without menace. The oak threw shade like a blessing. Back home, I parked under the familiar branches and brushed a palm across the tank. The paint caught that late-day gold like a quiet fire. The porch light clicked on. The street lamp hummed. Somewhere, a screen door squeaked and closed. Ordinary. Beautiful. So what would you do if someone tried to use the HOA to take something you love? Would you cave? Fight? Or find the boring, brave middle, where you show up with facts and patience? Anyone else had a HOA try to run your life, your yard, your mailbox color, your dog, your dignity? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk. Let's help each other figure out which turns to make and how much pressure to give, so nothing strips and everybody goes home in one piece.